In this video, we are looking at what's happening behind the scenes in this conflict between good and evil. Behind the scenes. Revelation 12, 7-9. And there was war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was not strong enough, and they lost their place in heaven. The great dragon was hurled down, that ancient serpent, called the devil or Satan. He was hurled to the earth, and his angels with him. Then I heard a loud voice in heaven say, Now have come the salvation, and the power and the kingdom of our God, and the authority of his Christ. For the accuser of our brothers, who accuses them before our God day and night, has been hurled down. So, what is happening behind the scenes? The war in heaven is a war that is taking place in the spiritual, invisible realm, and we cannot see it with our physical eyes. Michael, it doesn't matter exactly who he is clearly on God's side, while the dragon is the spokesman for the other side. The dragon is identified as that ancient serpent that deceived Eve, and he is called the devil or Satan. So before this war moved into the physical, visible realm, or into this earth, where you can see the physical consequences of the war with physical eyes, this war was already raging in the heavenly, spiritual, invisible realm. What are some of the key facts? Genesis chapter 3. Let's start at the beginning. Verses 1-4. Now the serpent was more crafty than any other wild animal that the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, Did God say, You shall not eat from any tree in the garden? The woman said to the serpent, We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden, but God said, You shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the middle of the garden, nor shall you touch it, or you shall die. But the serpent said to the woman, You will not die. The serpent is clearly displeased with how God functions and how he acts. It questions God's will, and it suggests that God is actually deceiving humans, that he is a liar. And some people sigh and say, why didn't God destroy the serpent in the beginning to prevent this big mess? God could have clicked his fingers, and half of the universe that may not be in agreement with him would have disappeared. Just like Thanos did in the Marvel's Infinity Saga. But clearly, that is not God's style, and it is out of his character. So, one of God's characteristics is that he allows. He allows. What exactly he allows, it doesn't matter. The point is that God is not a control freak, and that it is in his essential nature to allow, to permit. In other words, freedom seems to be extremely valuable to God. Moving forward in time, we come to the book of Job. The book of Job. Chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. Now there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord, and Satan also came among them. And the Lord said to Satan, From where do you come? So Satan answered the Lord and said, From going to and fro on the earth, from walking back and forth on it. The word Satan is not mentioned in Genesis. It is only when you come to the end of the Bible narrative in Revelation that the serpent is clearly identified as Satan or the devil or the dragon. So with a little help from the Apostle John, we know that Satan in the book of Job is the serpent from the Garden of Eden. This time his appearance is not as shrouded in mystery as it was in the Garden of Eden. He now appears as one of these beings called the sons of God. Clearly, neither Satan nor the sons of God nor God is visible to Job or any humans. They all observe humans, they all observe Job from behind the blacked out window of a car. You can see out through it, but you cannot see into it. These are all spiritual beings who dwell in the spiritual realm. Satan appears to be very, very active on this earth, and the nature of his activity is revealed in the next verse. So continue to read, verses 8 to 12. Then the Lord said to Satan, "Have you considered my servant Job? There is no one on earth like him. He is blameless and upright, a man who fears God and shuns evil." Does Job fear God for nothing? Satan replied. Have you not put a hedge around him and his household and everything he has? You have blessed the work of his hands, so that his flocks and herds are spread throughout the land. But stretch out your hand and strike everything he has, and he will surely curse you to your face. The Lord said to Satan, "Very well, then, everything he has is in your hands." Now, just like in the Garden of Eden, Satan is still questioning God's will and is suggesting that God is not transparent, that he is manipulating humans in order to gain their loyalty. Satan accuses God in front of the sons of God, saying that God is buying his support from humans through many goodies he gives them. In other words, Satan is saying, you're not actually giving anything away for free. There is a price attached to it. You're buying their loyalty. So this is not true loyalty. This is a business transaction based on interest, their interest and your interest. You want something from the humans, they want something from you, and as long as the supply and demand are there, things appear to be fine. But what if the chain of supply is broken? Then the demand for God will disappear. Take all your goodies away, and the human loyalty to you will also disappear. Here God remains constant. His nature remains constant, and he still allows, he still permits. He's still revealed as the one who allows and permits, and freedom seems to be extremely important to him. And here we have this strange request from Satan telling God to strike Job. Well, God draws the line here and says to Satan, I will allow you to do that. But I myself, I'm not getting involved in this experiment of yours. We'll let it run its course and see what happens in the end. And of course, God does not get involved in any way, because if he gets involved in any way, it will just give Satan more ammunition to pick on him and dissect him and question him even more. It is a bit of a tricky situation, really. What should be noticed that Satan has great freedom at this point in time. He seems to have access to this heavenly council, let's call it, of the sons of God, and he seems to have the right to come to the bench to voice his views. And he seems to have the right to vote, or whatever you want to call it. God allows him an incredible amount of freedom. Even more than that, God permits Satan to harass, to abuse, to oppress, and to persecute Job. Now, this is not good news for humans. Moving forward into the future, towards the time of one of the latest of the prophets in the Old Testament, the story continues. We come to the prophet Zechariah. We read this in Zechariah 3, verses 1 to 4. Then he showed me Joshua the high priest standing before the angel of the Lord, and Satan standing at his right side to accuse him. The Lord said to Satan, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan." Now Joshua was dressed in filthy clothes as he stood before the angel. The angel said to those who were standing before him, "Take off his filthy clothes." Then he said to Joshua, "See, I have taken away your sin. I have taken away your sin, and I will put rich garments on you." What we find is that as we move forward in time, there is development in this spiritual war between God and Satan. And there are ups and downs in this conflict between good and evil, just like in any other conflict. Now, while God allowed Satan to abuse Job, and God stood silently watching, refusing to engage in any way, here with Joshua, God appears to be more vocal and more determined not to allow Satan to harm Joshua in any way. Here, Satan's activity is portrayed in terms of accusing humans. Satan is presented as the chief accuser. Joshua was dressed in filthy clothes. This is a symbolic image of someone who is a sinner. And while Satan is pointing to the clear, obvious evidence, Exhibit 1, his garments, the forensic investigation confirms that Joshua has been up to no good. He's been involved in some filthy business, and the evidence remains visible on his clothing. The bottom line is Joshua is a sinner like the rest of us, all humans. And Satan keeps drilling and drilling at this point. And God stands up and says, "That is enough. No need to point out the obvious. We can all see the filthy garments." And then for no reason whatsoever, God commands that the filthy clothes should be removed and replaced with clean garments. And again, the key point is, God says, "Look, I have taken away your sin. I have taken away your sin." How can God do this? I'm sure that was the immediate reaction the sons of God could hear from Satan. How can God do this? And the sons of God, or the angels, or the heavenly beings, did wonder about this. And the symbol of the angels carved out at the top of the cover of the Ark of the Covenant, looking down to the cover of the Ark, tell us the same thing. The heavenly creatures are trying to figure out how God can cover or remove human sin. And first epistle of Peter 1:12 says the same thing. Even angels desire to look into these things, to comprehend them and figure them out. Now, just to show you that this is a part of a continuous story that runs through the scriptures. The same thing happened in the Garden of Eden. Just like Adam and Eve, and in their man-made clothes, made of fig leaves, were not acceptable to God. So Joshua's man-made clothes, his man-made clothes, were not acceptable to God. So in both cases, God removed and replaced their clothes with something different, with something better. Somehow, God is able to remove the human sin. But how? How? That is the question. For this, we have to move forward in time again as we arrive to the New Testament. The book of Jude 1:9. But even the archangel Michael, when he was disputing with the devil about the body of Moses, said, "The Lord rebuke you." Now here we have Michael again, the one who was there when the heavenly war started, even before the conflict in the Garden of Eden. But interesting statement, the Lord rebuke you. The same statement was used in the previous text in the book of Zechariah. On this occasion, the spiritual conflict is raised to the next level. Now, it is not only about arguing about the genuineness of human loyalty to God, like in the case of Job, or about arguing about whether God can accept sinners, like in the case of Joshua. Now, it is about a right to resurrect Moses back to life. And of course, Moses must have been resurrected before the New Testament times, as on the Mount of Transfiguration, he joined Elijah, who was taken to heaven in his body, and he never saw death, he never experienced dying. Here in Jude, reading between the lines, the devil was most likely disputing with God in the following way. Didn't you give Moses the law saying, you shall not kill? Yeah. Didn't you also say to the Israelites that they will live by obeying this law and that they will perish if they don't? Didn't Moses kill an Egyptian? How can a murderer live? In fact, the point is, how can a murderer live forever? We all know that Moses deserved to die according to your law and your will. So how can you raise him back to life? Now, if you look even deeper, read even more between the lines and take into the consideration the whole context of the war between good and evil, what Satan is actually coming to and what he really wants appears to be this. Okay, so if people who break your rules can live forever, I have the right to live forever also. Yes, I have broken your rules. Moses did too. By the way, your unreasonable rules. And unless you don't let me live forever like Moses, the murderer, you have a double standard. You're showing favoritism. You're unfair. All that talk about your goodness and righteousness and justice is nonsense. So, how does God justify his act of saving the sinners? Go back to the first scripture we read in this video. It speaks about Satan being hurled down to earth. At what moment? It says, now salvation and strength and kingdom of our God and the power of his Christ have come. For the accuser of our brethren who accused them before our God day and night has been cast down, and they overcame him by the blood of the Lamb. So the blood of the Lamb seems to be the key, the blood of the Lamb, the cross of Christ. The cross of Christ somehow provides simultaneously both the justification of God's action and justification of the sinners who live on the earth. And there is a text in the book of Colossians that really saying the same thing as what Revelation 12 is saying, in a slightly different way. And you, being dead in your trespasses and the uncircumcision of your flesh, he has made alive together with him, with Christ, having forgiven you all trespasses, having wiped out the handwriting of requirements that was against us, which was contrary to us, and he has taken it out of the way, having nailed it to the cross, having disarmed principalities of powers, those spiritual beings. He made a public spectacle of them, triumphing over them in it, or by the cross. So this is the image that we are left with when we come to the cross. There's all the sons of God around. There's the accuser. They're humans, and there's Christ somehow nailing the accusations to the cross. How? How does this work? What took place there? More about this in the next episode, so please stay tuned.